January 20th. If you want to know what's for dinner, chicken pot pie. And without bragging, my chicken pot pie is good. So let's get this done so I can get to my chicken pot pie. What I'm telling you here for 3 weeks now is that you can shape your reality by making thinking a habit. And that it will help you deal with the flood of information overwhelming every one of us every day now. Of course, you can't think yourself into the reality of $1 million. Though when I ever get around talking about the myth of money, you will see that that's exactly what happens at today's stock exchanges. Nor can you try to think yourself dead. A guy called Georg Philipp Friedrich Freiherr von Hardenberg, or Novalis for short, tried that in a mind over matter experience born out of a broken heart and failed. But by thinking, by asking yourself, why do you believe what you believe, you can end up changing your perception of reality fundamentally, what will lead you inevitably to ideas for changes and solutions which would not have been imaginable otherwise. Often because you consider certain things cut and dry that are actually open for debate. Today I set out to prove to you how fundamental the presumptions can be that we should overcome by considering the question of a quintessential human nature. Test yourself. What do you think? Good or bad? Are humans generally good or bad by nature? Now that you have made up your mind for now, let's travel back to the moment Europeans crashed into the American continent. They were greeted by humans who had arrived on the continent at least 20,000 to 22,000 years ago. And for what it was worth, they could have made first contact with aliens. Both groups perceived reality so differently, even when some of them had learned the other's language, they discovered these languages lacked the words to explain the ideas that governed them. One of the most fundamental differences was the question of personal liberty. The Europeans were opposed to freedom on principle. Yes, the Europeans. Why? Because their faith required them not only to submit their will, but also their minds, their judgments, and also all their sentiments to a power unknown to their senses, to a law that was not on earth and the earthly power that ruled on it. The First Nations were ruled by a general principle of freedom. Even the chiefs had to convince their fellow members with arguments to do something. And they deeply valued the time they used to exchange their views on matters. I will come back to how this clash led to the birth of the concept of democracy and can quite directly be linked to the French Revolution and the US War of Independence. But today I walk into another direction with that. Meeting other humans that knew how to argue their position often more eloquently than the conquerors, because the exchange of arguments and the use of the other's ideas to develop one's own positions but deeply ingrained in them posed a difficulty. More than one, but one difficult question was, what rights do human beings have simply by dint of their being humans? These were no Christians, but they couldn't be any Christians because they never had the chance to get in contact with the Christian ideas. So what worth had these human beings just by being human beings? And that led in a straight line to the question of human nature. The people who still define our discussion on this today are Hobbs and Rousseau. Philosophers who imagined Rousseau in the framework of a writing contest what early human society 70,000 years ago, or really any time between the cognitive revolution and 7,400 years ago when the first city was founded, must have been like. The space and terms they were thinking in were those of wealthy, white Christian men who had just rediscovered the writings of antiquity. To their honor and credit, neither of them ever claimed to know the factual truth. Theirs were hypotheses. It's people after them who considered their writings the absolute truth. What was their conclusion? The veneer theory. Morality is a purely cultural overlay, grating against our true natures. Simply put, humans are bad. And without rules and those who enforce them, we would all be in a constant state of war with each other. This cynicism is in the interest of people in power. If we cannot be trusted, cannot trust each other, we need them. The monarchs, the prime ministers, the CEOs, the rich guys who have education. Someone needs to control us, and most of our social structures and our behavior is based even today on this presumption that we are bad and that we need someone who keeps us in line. Here's the thing though, science tells us otherwise. Starting with the fact that the advantage we drew out of evolution, that we developed language, was the ability to cooperate. The lifestyle then led to a natural selection that tilted the playing field toward the friendliest. The more friends you had, the more food and safety you had, and childcare. But not only that. I've mentioned before that the upright gait along with a large head made giving birth a problem. Women who had help in birth just had a better chance of survival and therefore of spreading their genes. There is more research pointing to the innate goodness of humans. Very interesting stuff about the behavior of babies and toddlers. But for time reasons, I only want to mention the more than 700 case studies done by sociologists all around the world of human behavior in the most harrowing situations after earthquakes and hurricanes and tsunamis, etc. The belief is that people panic, start looting, start plundering, and start behaving in really horrible ways. We are becoming animals again. That are the stories the media wants to tell us, and they zoom in with their cameras on the exceptions. Exceptions because it turns out, whenever something like this happens, scientists have proven people start to cooperate on a massive scale. What's the result of working off a wrong hypothesis? We live in the reality of people are bad, we can't trust each other, and we distrust. And the hypothesis turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy like that. Thinking can change the perception of reality, can redefine what it means to be a realist, can lead us to believe, as science tells us, in the good of people, in our own potential, in kindness, in cooperation. Of course, this will make us question why we need to go back to the office to be supervised. It will make us question hierarchy in general and inequality. But this is the beauty of thinking. New possibilities. So make it a habit. Think. And now I go to my pot pie.